Hello and welcome to this here final installment of How to Study. This particular section is going to be on note taking. Now, all of the links to the previous videos on my thoughts on how to study, you'll be able to find the link down in the bottom of the post there. Go back and watch those because the ideas and the concepts, they all tie together. All right. We started out with the SQR3, scan, question, read, write, recite as a basic method in order to have a plan, a flow as part of your studying. We discussed things like comprehension versus understanding and application. Things like, do I know this or don't I? Always asking that question. Um, but today we're going to focus on note taking and to give you a little bit better idea and see a little how the real detail of all of this kind of like works. So without further ado, let's move on here. All right. What most people do when they open up a textbook is they begin to read and they just start at the beginning and go to the end. And remember, with SQR3, the first thing we were doing was scanning in order to prep our mind for what was coming. And then we read. Well, when people read, instead of just, they'll read all the way through and not do anything, which is fine. That's part of also preparing your mind. But repetition is the mother of learning, and you need to go back and reread and be more active with your reading. So when people do that, what they do is they immediately start thinking, well, how do I take notes? Okay. Well, one of the ways to be able to take notes is by writing. You read something, and on a separate piece of paper, you you write notes. Okay. And the notes are supposed to be um, from you. Okay. What ends up happening is people go and they rewrite the whole textbook. In other words, as they're reading, they're just copying what's in the textbook. They're not putting it in their own words in order to make it for as part of themselves. Um, sure, the writing is more active. You're using more senses. You're repeating to yourself because you have to, read it and then write it and repeat it, and that's a good thing. And you're being kinesthetic by actually writing, so you are bringing in more senses. And if you speak, and if you have some kind of recorder, and then you can listen to it, that brings into even more senses to help you be able to learn. But writing takes a long time. Okay, and people don't want to spend all that time. So what do? Out comes the ever popular highlighter, right? Highlighting in yellow. Okay, so as they read, they're highlighting as they read. Okay, because this seems important. And what they're not doing is they're not asking the question, do I know this or don't I? So what ends up happening is after they get done reading and they have everything highlighted, they're still lost because they don't remember anything. It hasn't sunk in. So what they do is they go back, or they might use this as an alternative to highlighting in yellow. They underline everything in red, okay, to kind of like point out this is good, this is bad, or whatever have you. All right, this is what I need to learn. So what ends up happening is, and I'm going to give an example here. Here's this text, okay, and people will have a tendency to go, okay, soon the whole textbook looks like this. So they highlight all this. Forgive me, I'm not so used to this, because everything seems to be important, right? This is because you're not asking the question, do I know this or don't I? So granted, higher level concepts will completely new and notes will need to be taken on almost everything because everything you don't know. However, many of the concepts do build one upon the other. Therefore, if I know half of the concept, this is the part you do know and you don't need to take a note. What can you do is to associate what you don't know and what you do so to better understand and learn what you need to. Okay, so after we've read that and we've highlighted it all, do I remember any of it? No. So then we have a tendency to go back. I mean, and don't misunderstand me. I mean, this was me, okay? I'm showing you what I had done in the past, all right? So I had read the book. Okay, as I'm reading, I'm highlighting, and I still haven't, I mean, right now, short term, but if I come back tomorrow, I'm not going to remember most of this. So then I'm going to read it again, and I'm going to start underlining. Soon the whole textbook looks like this, because everything seems to be important. This is because you're not asking the question, do I know this or don't I? Granted, higher level concepts will be completely new, and notes will need to be taken on almost everything, because everything you don't know. However, many of the concepts do build one upon the other. Therefore, if you know half of the concept, that is a part you do know and you don't need to take a note on. What you can do is to associate what you don't know to what you do to better understand and learn what you need to. Okay, now that I've gone through that like 3 times. I read it, then I ended up reading it and highlighting it, and then I read it and underlined, and basically all I'm doing is just keep on repeating. Okay, and what you're going to find is that your textbook is going to look like this, especially on higher level concepts. Everything is going to be yellow. Everything's going to be highlighted and underlined in red. Okay, and are you really taking it? No, you're basically memorizing. Okay, higher level education, higher level thinking is about understanding, not memorization. Go back to one of the other videos that was covered, that idea. Okay, so what we have here is you're just repeating and basically memorizing. You haven't really understood the material. So, what is it that you actually should do or to be more effective? And that's where I think the idea of writing is important. Okay, but if you read this text, I talked here about, do I know this or don't I, right? That was an important concept, okay? And also association, right? When it comes to note taking, you're reading, and part of what you read, what you should be doing is you should always be asking yourself, do I know this or don't I? Okay? Um, you know, if you know it, as I said in the previous video, you don't need to put it down as a note. But the stuff you don't know, yeah, you should be taking notes, and that's where writing gives you that kinesthetic and helps you remember and retain it a little bit better. Okay, but when you're writing, what do you write? Well, you don't rewrite what's in the book. That takes way too long. Also, you're not associating, right, um, with what you already know. Okay, in one of the previous videos, I talked about association. Your mind being a Velcro wall, and you have these little balls of information, and you toss them up against the wall. Some of them bounce off, some of them stick, and it's easier for you to be able to associate new information with old information. It sticks a lot better. It's very difficult to just start out with something new. So as part of your notes, you should always be trying to make those associations, right? And that kind of has to do with, the concepts. If you have a higher level course and everything is new, like let's just take statistics, for example. Chapter 1 in a business statistics book is kind of, introductory stuff, talks about mean and median and stuff like this, and all you're doing is just, averaging kind of, and I'm just oversimplifying, but, there's going to be some things in chapter 1 that you're not going to know, all right, and you'd make some notes, but not everything is completely fresh, okay, so you would want to skip that stuff, all right. Then when you get to chapter 3, you start talking about things like standard deviation. Well, that has a bunch of math in it, but you have to understand the formula and the concepts between, a population and a sample. And really, if you understood the standard deviation for a population, you should understand the standard deviation for a sample with just one minor tweak, because one is a subset of the other. Why study both? Okay, your note when you talk about the population, okay, should include the formula, right? Um, but when you go to study the sample, okay, the formula is almost the same, except there's a minor variation, okay, a -1. So if you've learned the formula for population and you're going to learn about samples, okay, then the only thing, you should be associating that formula, okay, from the population to the sample. You shouldn't be relearning it, okay, as a whole thing. So your notes for a sample should be very, very short. Population would be, very dense because it's, it's a whole new concept. But when it comes to the sample, if you associate it, you're only showing the differences. So the writing, it's what you know that you're putting on the page, and you're trying to link things together, and that's your mind being active, which helps you to learn a lot better. Okay. Now, for the last idea about note taking, what I want to cover here is, let's say in the chapter there's 45 pages. Okay. All right. When you're taking the notes, okay, you should not have 45 pages of notes. Okay. I can't tell you how many pages of notes that you have. Um, that all depends upon you. But as an example, let's say that when I take my notes for that particular chapter, I end up having, I don't know, let's see here, 6 pages of notes. 1, 2, 3, oh, 4, 5, 6. Where did I get 6 from? Okay, 5 pages of notes. Okay, now, these notes should be the things that you don't know from that chapter. Okay, there shouldn't be hardly anything on here other than your association out of these 45 pages of stuff that you do know. Okay, so once you've taken these notes, you basically don't need the textbook anymore. Okay, because all you've done is said, okay, these are the things I don't know. Right? The only reason why you would go back to the textbook is because you want further clarification, or maybe you didn't understand the concept fully and you want to go back and revisit it. Okay, but after that, you've kind of like said to yourself, out of this here 45 pages, this is only this information is what I have to study. Okay, all right, so now you're going, and remember when you wrote these notes, that was a repetition. All right, so now when you study, right, well, all you want to study is these 5 pages. You don't need to be going back and studying the other 45, everything through that 45, okay? And don't forget, doing homework is an important thing. But when we have these 5 pages and we're going to study with these 5 pages, what we want to do is we want to start out with page 1, and we're always asking the question, do I know this or don't I? And if there's something that I do know because I've had enough repetition and it's sunk in, then I don't need to include it in my notes. And the same thing with, page number 2, okay? And then page number 3, okay? And page number 4, and page number 5. So now, after I've gone through these 5, I'll have learned some of that material, and some of it I haven't. And I only want to make notes on what I don't know. And I'm reducing the number of pages in my notes down to 3. Okay, I can't tell you, this is an example. I can't tell you specifically how many, but whatever it is, it's, you're note taking. If you're focused and you're concentrating and you're thinking, you should be reducing the number of pages that you need to take notes. Okay, so now we're at, we have 3 pages of notes. Okay, again, we don't need to go back to these 5. We only need to study what's on these 3, and we're always asking, do I know this or don't I? And you want to go and, rewrite another repetition, okay? And now maybe you only have 2 pages left, okay? Because some of that you retained, some of it went into your long-term memory, all right? And all you have left is stuff that you just don't know, okay? And you want to, basically you kind of like want to keep repeating this until you get down to just 1 page, okay? And when you get down to 1 page, then, that 1 page is sort of like your master, and after a few more readings of it, um, thinking about it, you pretty much pick up everything that you need on it. And that's and if you have an open book test and that's the stuff you don't know, then that's the notes that you need to refer to. That's it. You don't need to refer to be looking around through 5 pages of notes, okay, when you're taking a test, because all that information you've already learned, and all you have is just what's left here on this 1 page, okay? Um, so that's how I did it when I was in school. And it might seem like a lot of work because at first you're reading through and then you have to write these notes. I stopped highlighting and I stopped underlining, okay, and I started writing. And as I started writing, um, I actually ended up what seems like a lot more time. I ended up spending a lot less time, and I've been able to retain it much better over the course of time. I've been out of school for many, many years, and even though, when a student says, "Oh, well, I'm on this page," I don't, and I'm just going to make something up here. Let's say binomial distribution. It might not jump into my mind immediately, but it's stuck in my long-term memory because I've had so many of these here repetitions that, give me a second or two, and I can pretty much remember what I had learned back then and have been able to use it. So it sticks into your craw a little bit better. Okay, so I hope that helped. As far as note taking, if you have any questions, leave a comment or, call and speak with me, and I'll, be more than happy to discuss, this idea with you. Again, past videos are linked in the bottom of this post here. Go back through, watch them. You know, don't think that learning is just what I got to, getting my degree isn't what I, just got to get through this material in a textbook. Sometimes you do additional work. In this case here, it's like, oh, I might spend this extra hour or two, watching these videos on how to study, and these are going to trigger things that will save you an immense amount of time down the road, give you better grades, and you'll be able to know and retain the information better in a long term. And that makes you just that much more valuable out in the workplace. So I hope you enjoyed this. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to comment, ask, and like the video. Okay. Thanks and have a great day and best of luck in your studies.